Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Modern Golden Age podcast. And today it's a very special episode. I have with me Austin Scholar. Austin, thank you so much for being on the show. It's a real pleasure to talk with you. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited for this.
Yeah. So perfect. So, Austin, for those of you who don't know you, you're a high schooler, and I just stumbled upon your work because I saw a Twitter thread of yours that started like this, and I'm going to quote, and then I'll ask you to just talk about it. So, you started the tweet with this sentence: "I haven't had a teacher since fourth grade." And the moment I read that, I was hooked to understand like the whole history behind it and what's your journey throughout education. And so I guess that my first question would be to everyone that doesn't know Austin Scholar, like talk a little bit about yourself and about your journey through education.
Of course. Yes, my name is Austin Scholar. I am a high schooler in Austin, Texas, and I haven't had a teacher since fourth grade. And basically, starting in fourth grade, I started really getting into alternative education. Well, I did, but it's my parents kind of um,
Nudge you into that
impacted me and
direction.
started,
Yeah.
yeah, led me to all of the alternative education. And I started using online apps to do all of my academics and all of the educational aspect of it. And so I use Khan Academy is the most well-known one.
Yeah.
And it's basically just a way to learn concepts online and at your own pace. And
Mm-hmm.
so that all started in fourth grade. And then my entire family, we sort of like went on this journey of exploring alternative education and these apps. And if we learn on these apps, it's not we're not in a classroom and we're not going through a like time specific curriculum, and so we can learn faster because it's all like specified to us and to
Yeah.
me. And so since I was able to learn faster in the morning, I had the afternoon to learn life skills
Mm.
and things like that. And so I did that all throughout middle school.
Middle school?
And then now that I'm in high school, I spend the afternoon doing a masterpiece project.
Yeah.
Um,
And sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
oh, I was just
Okay.
gonna ask if you wanted me to explain more.
Yeah. So let's just pause, and I want to go back to middle school before you specify what the masterpiece is. So, like, first of all, that's so cool that your parents were those kinds of parents, right? And they were willing to just explore that. And I guess my question was like, when you're in middle school, you're clearly having a different experience. Like, did you have friends that go to regular middle school? And if so, like, did you have like any kind of issues with that, or just like how did that relationship work?
Yeah, of course. So I went to a private school for up until fourth grade, and then
Mhm.
I switched to this alternative school it was called Acton at the time, but now it's sort of morphed into Alpha. So I'll just
Yeah.
call it Alpha for um,
Yeah.
consistency's sake. And so at Alpha, I had a bunch of friends. I like made a bunch of friends at Alpha, but I still had like my friends from like elementary school.
Yeah.
And so even though I didn't like hang out with them a lot, I
Mm.
still was able to. I saw a couple of my friends at church on Sunday,
Yeah.
and and so I was still able to keep in contact, but I obviously just wasn't as close with them.
Yeah, of course.
I didn't, there wasn't, I didn't have any real conflicts. It was more just, we definitely had different experiences. And so we
Mm.
definitely did drift apart, but it
Mm.
wasn't that, we didn't have any big
Yeah,
conflicts.
probably.
And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
still obviously, yeah, I had all my friends from Alpha. And so, um, I was totally
Yeah,
okay
cool.
still.
Yeah. So one of the things that I was going to ask, because one of the things that I noticed is that in the US, you have way more alternatives in terms of education. Like here in Portugal, you have like the typical education system. You have something in high school called professional courses, which are usually looked down upon because they're more practical courses. And you have a tiny percentage of people that actually embrace like alternative education and do some homeschooling. But I was wondering, like, do you feel like there's a big difference of, I mean, of course there's a big difference between like doing the typical school and like the alternative school, but as you drifted apart from those friends, did you feel like you were somehow more prepared, or you were having like a different kind of knowledge and learning experience? Like how was that?
Yeah, so I definitely think that there is a difference. And it's like specifically with Alpha, there's a huge focus on independence and like ambition and internal motivation. And so
Mm,
I feel like I got an experience. I got an experience where I know that I'm capable of doing a lot and a lot of really
mm,
cool things, even though I'm still in high school. And
yeah.
actually taking that, the high school is actually a benefit and something that I can that it's a positive aspect, not a oh I'm in high school so I can't do anything.
Mm,
And so I
mm.
think that's a core piece that of my experience that I got that a lot of my friends in traditional
Didn't have.
schooling didn't.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm writing on an essay exploring this idea why high schoolers are actually a key factor to getting us into a modern golden age. And one of the things that I shared was precisely something along those lines. In my high school I did a professional course in music, and so I had this very different experience from my peers because I was 16 years old and I was just obsessed around music. And I was trying to sell my music to different venues. I built this entrepreneurial mindset. And one of the things that really shaped was my mindset and my beliefs was the fact that I was playing in venues with people that were way older than me. And the level was basically the same. Sometimes I was even better. And that made me realize that when it comes to human potential, age is merely a number, right? And so the fact that and having those experiences in high school makes you think that, oh wait, I have a lot of agency and I can create very great things regardless of being a high schooler or not. And so that's a great experience. So before we get into the masterpiece, I just have one more question. Sorry, you mentioned Alpha School, of course, and give us like an overview of some of the principles in that school. Like how does that work?
Of course. So Alpha has three commitments to students. The first is that they're going to love school. And so that part comes from just having all that internal motivation and not being forced to sit in the classroom and just like listen to a lecture all day.
Yeah.
So you're going to love school. You're going to learn twice as fast. And that comes from apps and online learning. And finally, you will learn life skills. And so this is the afternoon. And so, how are you going to spend your afternoon becoming, getting the most potential out of you that you can? And so,
Mm-hmm.
in high school, it's like I said, masterpieces, but then there's also things like college application. Like, how can you do that? How can you learn how to learn? I wrote an article about that,
Yeah, you
about
did.
Jason Tatum. Yeah, and so being able to take the internet and uh, just use it to learn anything you want.
Yeah, and we can riff on that a little bit, but let's just go into the masterpiece. So you just mentioned you spend the mornings just getting your curriculum with these different apps, and then in the afternoon you work in your masterpiece. So tell us what that is.
Yeah, so a masterpiece is a super ambitious project that all alpha high schoolers complete within 4 years. And so this masterpiece is supposed to be comparable to an Olympian when you're applying to college. And so it's like, so you want the college admissions officer to look at you and be like, wow, this project is just as impressive as that Olympic fencer that I just let in. And so
Mm,
that is the goal of the masterpiece, is to just have it very, very um, impressive and ambitious. And
yeah.
we have these four criteria for um, the masterpiece. We call it DELT. And so the first is desirable. And so you have to like desire it. It has to be something that is like challenging and just hard, but also something that you're passionate about. And so it has to be desirable, externally hard and valuable. And so that's a lot of where the Olympic level comes in. And
Comes
it just
in.
has to be, other people have to think that that's really hard. Like you can't, if your masterpiece is, oh, I'm going to watch 20 hours um, of Netflix every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's hard, but that's not that's not
Yeah.
externally
Yeah.
valuable. You might think it's hard, but it's not really. The third one is you have to love it. And so if you're going to spend 4 years of afternoons working on this, you have to love what you're doing. And the fourth thing is time. And so you have to commit to spending a lot of time, and just enjoy the time that you're going to be spending on it. And so
Mm,
they're all kind of wrapped up in these ideas that you have to create a project that you are passionate about and that is really hard. That's kind of the
hmm.
idea behind masterpieces.
Yeah, that's a great example. And one of like it's a great example of how to lead a learning experience. And I'm fascinated by this. Is part of my job. And like it's basically what you just mentioned. It's basically a lot around how you enjoy doing that, and that's great. So tell us, what's your masterpiece?
So my masterpiece is to basically create a newsletter, and get 10,000 paid subscribers on it. And so that means that my Substack will basically be in the top 10 most subscribed newsletters. And so that's definitely really hard, really challenging. But and to get 10,000 people to pay me to read my writing. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of a lot, but I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, and you're doing an awesome job about it. So let's go into that. Like, how did that idea like just emerge?
Yeah, so high schoolers aren't we're not meant to know exactly what we want to do like first day of freshman year. And so I spent a lot of freshman year experimenting and figuring out what it was that I wanted to spend my time on.
Mm,
Originally, I had a masterpiece around mental health and creating some sort of mental health program to
mm,
help teenagers, because that was something that was really important to me and like had impacted my life. But then as I kept working on it, and I just dreaded working on it because it made
mm,
me really sad to
mm.
work on, because it's just such a depressing topic.
Yeah.
And so I realized that I needed to change it. And so over the summer, I spent a lot of time thinking about what do I like to do? And I think I went to a summer program in Madrid, um, and it was all about writing. And I came back from it and I was like, I just voluntarily spent 2 weeks learning about writing in the summer. I feel like there's a trend here. And so I changed I knew I wanted to do something with writing.
Mm,
Um, and then I just thought about what am I good at? What do I know? And I know a lot about alternative education and adaptive apps, and basically everything that has kind of shaped my life for 6 years. And
yeah.
so that was kind of how I came to writing about education. And so then it just came into how to fine tune it to make it Olympic level, is kind of
Hmm.
how the idea emerged.
Yeah. That's great. And one of the things that I really enjoyed is that you like actually I'll let you answer. Like, who are you writing for?
I'm writing for parents,
Yeah, and
kids.
that go ahead,
Mm-hmm.
go ahead. Sorry.
I was just saying, teenagers, they are not going to pay me. They do not care. They do not want to read about education after they just spent 7 hours at school. And I know that,
Yeah,
I am aware of it. So my audience is not those teenagers. So my
yeah,
audience is their parents, because there's
yeah. And
nothing a parent cares about more than their kids' education.
the kids, yes. Like the first time that I saw your tweet, and I went to your profile, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. And back then, so since I work, part of my job is with high schoolers. I was like, oh, okay, maybe I can grab some of the her tweets and just send to some of the students that we work with. It took me just a minute to realize, oh no, she's doing a whole different thing, which is way smarter. Which is basically, that kids won't read about education because they're tired of
Mhm.
school, and so you're aiming at their parents. And I found that fascinating, really. And so that's great. So how long do you still have before until you have to finish like the masterpiece?
Well,
Is it the same year?
it goes until senior year, and
Mm.
I'm this is my junior year, and so
Oh,
um I still have a year and a half, a little bit over a year and a half left.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but I want to get it to an impressive enough level, but by the time that I submit college applications. And
Mm,
so that is a lot closer to a year than
mm,
like the end of
mm.
school.
Yeah, basically. You're just, yeah, I get that. So like, because here's the thing. I was just doing a call with part of my team recently this morning, and I was talking with them, and I was talking that I was going to interview you. And one of the things that I really found fascinating is how ambitious the project is. Like, I look at some high schoolers here in Portugal, and like we work with them in order to develop like some kind of project that can help their communities. And most of the times, the only thing that we need to do is just basically tell them that they can do something. It's not even it doesn't have it has to be like a big thing. It just, you can do something. And I was wondering, like, in your experience, like, where did that ambition come from? Like doing something that big. I know that you have like Alpha School just prompts you to do it, but do you feel that part of that ambition was just inside of you? Like, where does that come from?
Yeah, I think part of it definitely comes from my family, because um, both my mom and my dad and my sister, um, they're all really, they're all so supportive, and they tell me that, or they're very much under the impression that high schoolers can do anything, and you just have to put in the time and effort to do so.
Mm,
And it's very much hard work leads to reward. And that's kind of how everything in my family structure has operated forever.
mm,
And so
mm,
doing hard things has just always been kind of part of who I am, and who and like how my family is. And so
mm,
just being able to take that into, and like I have to do a hard project, so I'm going to make it as ambitious as possible.
yeah.
And just because it's possible, it is not impossible for me to do this, and so I'm willing to put in the time and the effort to make it happen.
Yeah, that's such a great answer. So, can you give some examples? And if you can't, it's perfectly fine. But can you give some examples of other masterpieces that maybe some of your colleagues are doing, just
Mhm.
to get like a broader vision of what you guys are
Of
working on?
course. There are a few, like, so my best friend, I talk about her a lot in my newsletters. But she's super passionate about religion and morality and everything like that. But she noticed that a lot of other teenagers don't really care about it, and
Mm,
like a lot of Gen Z culture is really
mm,
decreasing the value and the importance of any type of like religion or like values things.
yeah.
And so her masterpiece is to get 1 million followers on TikTok, that on a TikTok, and her TikTok is about um uh explaining the importance of values and all of that, like morality and religion, and why it's
Huh.
important. in a way that teenagers would like. And so she's using all of these like pop culture movies and popular songs, and she's explaining how they're all rooted in these core values, and like, so just so she can explain the importance of them. And so
Yeah.
that's my best friend's
That's
project.
awesome. After the show, you'll, if you want, you can send me a TikTok and we'll add it on like
Mm-hmm.
the description of the
Mm-hmm.
podcast. And I would love to talk with her in the podcast as well, because I believe that
Of course.
like values are something that's I talked about. I talk about values in literally almost all the episodes, if not all the episodes of the podcast. So I would love to talk with
Mm-hmm.
her. And can you give us just one more example of other masterpiece
Yeah,
that
of course. So another one of my friends, he basically bikes um all day, every day. Like he is an insane mountain biker. And so he's building a bike park in Texas. And he has to get like grants and funding and all of this
Yeah.
stuff. And he like spends his afternoons like after school. He's like just like cutting down trees and just like making all these
Yeah.
paths and stuff like that. And so that's pretty cool. And then I think he wants to add another layer to it where he has to like convince ESPN to put mountain biking as as like an official sport or something on their website. I'm not totally
Wow.
sure about the specifics on that, but it's something
Yeah.
like with ESPN and then building his own bike park.
Awesome. That's phenomenal. That's just so good. So, like one of the things, and you published a weekly newsletter, and I have a bunch of questions about some of those issues. But I do just want to ask you something related still to the learning experience, which is the first time that I before I understood that you were in Alpha School and doing some research on them. I just assumed that um, doing all that learning was actually a very individual process. And like, and basically, you were alone at home, just going through different apps. But actually, when I was started to look into it a little bit more, I just realized that you guys have this whole community of people going through that experience. But then you have also the community aspect of it. And I was wondering, like, first of all, how important is that, like keeping a community while learning as a high schooler? And second one, because you do because Alpha School gives you tremendous freedom to just choose your interests. Like it ends up like you end up a bunch of different people that are very high, like they have like high potential, but they have these very different interests. So how do you mix that with finding like a tribe with the same interests that you have, right? So those are two questions that I would love to get your answers.
Yeah, of course. So I have found the community piece super, super important because if I was just like holed away in my room all day doing apps and math and stuff, I would probably get I would probably start feeling pretty bad and just lonely. And
Yeah,
it's definitely not, I don't know, I wouldn't like it at all.
yeah,
But because I'm surrounded by all these people who are doing the same thing, and we can all help each other and lift each other up. And yes, we have apps to teach us, but this morning I was asking one of my friends how to download a stats function on my calculator. It's still community. We still have a very tight knit community, even though we are all kind of on our own learning paths.
mm, yeah, yeah. And so and basically, you feel like having people around you. And I mentioned this because you mentioned the going to Madrid, and like the newsletter where you talk about it is called Find Your Tribe, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
basically what happens is, even though you're once again in a context where everyone's learning and you're all friends, you have these very different tastes
Mm-hmm.
and obsessions and interests. And so how do you combine that with having like a group of people, a group of friends who actually share the same obsession that you do? Like how can we find those tribes as a high schooler?
Yeah. So obviously I have like my super close friends that go to Alpha and all of that stuff. And I guess part of it is that we, even though we have different like passions, we're all still kind of on the same path, and we're all still
Mm,
trying to do this masterpiece, and
mm,
we're all working on like building an audience and like doing these kind of challenging things,
challenges. Yeah.
even though they might be a little bit different in topic and concept, they're all quite similar. And so we can still build that community
Yeah.
that way. But also, I think like for me, I love to write, and so I went to Madrid and I found all of these really great my writing friends. We all love to just like write together. And so, and then I did the same thing this summer at Oxford. And so, I think it's just sometimes there's all these experiences. You're not the only person who likes this one thing.
Hmm.
And so, like, even though
Hmm.
there's not a person at the school who like genuinely enjoys to write like I do,
Mm.
um, those people exist somewhere in the world. And so I just took I found the opportunities that I could that would connect me with those people, and was able to have a great few weeks with them. And we still like if I need someone to like edit my work or whatever, I just like send it over and I'm like, hey, um, you mind looking this over? And
Yeah.
so it's still it's a different type of friendship, but it's still one where that I value, and that it's just because I went and found those people.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Because one of the things that I really like when I was in high school and saying I was studying music, and funny enough, like most of my friends came from outside of the music, and it wasn't just because we shared this common obsession that we could actually be friends. We ended up doing it. But one of the things that I really think is that's great as a high school is just, and you can check in on this, is to make sure that we have like experiences that somehow bond us. And one of the best ways to do it is basically through different challenges. Because human beings bond many different ways. One of them is pain. And I'm not talking about physical or extreme pain, but just the pain of going through a challenge, of trying to build an audience, of trying to build these different projects, sure seem like a very good way to bond and to connect. So, you of course, you're one of, if not the obsession is writing. Why? Like, if by all these different things, and you already mentioned like how did you get into writing, but like what is it about writing that attracts you so much? Do you have like an explanation, or is it just something that you just
Yeah.
feel like doing?
Yeah. So basically I've been a reader forever. Um, there's been a ton when I was in elementary school, my mom, there's this book series that I loved, The Secrets of the Immortal Nicholas Flamel.
Oh,
I loved loved that book series. And so when I was first reading it, it was like 10 o'clock, and that's like late for these
mm,
for little children. And so
yeah.
I was reading it, and I was like, no, mom, I'm not gonna go to sleep. I'm gonna keep reading. And she physically had to take the book out of my hand and was like, you are going to bed.
Yeah.
And so I've definitely always had a passion for words and
Mm,
the things that they can create. Um, and then I guess as I got older, um, writing was just a way for me to express myself. But not only that, it was to show who I wanted to be, and
mm,
um, how I wanted to present myself to the world. And so I would write these like, that now in middle school, I'm writing all these like short middle school stories about like a popular girl who is like super good at absolutely everything, and everyone
yeah.
thinks she's super pretty and all that. And so, I mean, as silly as they are, it's kind of like the way that I wanted the world to see me. And so that's
Mm,
kind of how I used writing, and that's kind of
mm,
transferred to like my masterpiece. And
yeah.
obviously I'm not exactly Austin Scholar, every day and
Of course.
in every conversation. But it's how I want to present myself and how I want to show my experiences and my personality to the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of what writing is for me.
That's such a deep answer. I love it. Yeah. A few quick questions before we get into the modern
Yeah.
golden age part. Like, you're a fan of books, and of reading, clearly. Like, the typical question, like, give us what? Oh no, what are like two, three books that you think that high schoolers all around the world should read? You have like any recommendation on that level?
Well, all around the world. That part's I feel like kind of hard, but one of my favorite books is called The Infinite Powers, and it's the story of and history of calculus. And so that
Mm,
sounds so boring and so horrible. I know. I picked it up and I was like, what is this? Absolutely not. Um, but I started reading it, and it's basically in math class, you do not learn any of the backstory behind any math formula. It's just like, here's this equation, go do it, whatever, no one cares. But with this
mhm.
book, I started reading it, and it was just completely mesmerizing and captivating because math is very binary, yes, no, number or no, not number, blah blah blah,
Yeah.
find the variable. But there's actually some really complex history and backstory to it, and it really made me realize like why I should care about math, because it's like, oh, you want to, how do things move, like how do you move, you know people figure that out through math. And you know the like infinity, like what even is that, why do people care about that,
Hmm.
why do I have to use that in equations, that's so annoying. But it's actually, there's so much value in that that I only learned because I like read this book. And
Yeah.
so that one is, I mean, it's obviously, that book is not going to be for everyone,
Yeah.
no matter how much I love it, but it definitely, it gives a different perspective on math, which is, you know definitely not one of the most
Like,
interesting topics
yeah.
to high schoolers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I did put the bar really high with everyone in the world. I know, but I want your
Mhm.
answer. So, and lowering a little bit the standard, like what are some of your favorite books? Like what do you like to read?
So I am I'm definitely a fiction girl. I In 2020, I set a goal to read 125 books, and I would say 120 of them were YA fiction
Mm,
novels. And so
yeah.
I've covered all the bases for young adult fiction. And so I really found I love mystery novels. Oh my God. I love them. And then I also found I really like psychological thrillers, which I was
Mm,
not expecting. I won't be honest. I was not expecting to like those. Um, but there's a bunch of book series um, uh, about that are like the mystery novel part. One of Us is Lying. It got a TV show. Um, the book is 10,000 million times better than the TV show.
mm.
Um, it's not even close.
I,
Um,
I actually haven't watched the show or read the book, but
mhm.
I'll look into it.
Yeah, One of Us is Lying is pretty good. Then there's the Murder Trending series. Um, you have to be okay with some gory stuff to read that. It is pretty intense. I know it's so weird that I really like that stuff, but I found it really interesting actually. My parents were all very concerned when I told them
Yeah,
about the book that I was reading.
yeah. I
Um,
guess.
yeah.
I bet.
Also, Stalking Jack the Ripper. It's actually probably the that one's good. It's another murder mystery that I also really enjoy.
Awesome. I'll check into those. We'll add those links to the description, and I'll look into some of them, and I'll let you know what I think of it. So, one last question before we get into the modern golden age. Can you talk about WWKJD, which is an acronym for What Would Chris Jenner Do?
Yes. Yes. Okay. So, I was not a Kardashians person. I did not watch a single episode of that Kardashian show until one of my really, really good friends, he was like, you have to watch it. There's a new season. We're going to watch it together. And I was like, okay, sure, whatever. Um, and so I watched that show, and I thought that there was I felt like there was a lot deeper personalities behind these scene like trashy TV um
Mm.
women. And so I uh after watching that first episode, I did kind of like I obviously I watched the rest of the season, and I kind of did like a deeper dive into the Kardashians and who they are. And one of the things that really struck me was how truly ambitious and just ruthless these women are. And specifically Kris Jenner. She is totally willing to do anything to reach her goal. And so it was kind of motivational for me, like whatever I need to do to reach this, I'm going to do it. I'm going to be like Kris Jenner. Obviously not like Kris Jenner, obviously.
Yeah.
But taking that idea of the willingness to do anything to reach your goal is kind of is something that I was super motivated by. And so now, like when I'm working on my masterpiece, and I'm worried about like doing a cold outreach, or like trying to um, send an email to someone that I don't know. I'm definitely working on all those skills, but I find them really hard and really scary. And so I stop and I think to myself, what would Kris Jenner do? Would she send this email? If the answer is yes, I send the email.
Yeah.
It's like I and obviously she's reached her goal. Her family
Absolutely.
in is completely insane and famous. And normal reality TV families,
They
they don't
don't last the
last.
season. Yeah.
The Kardashians are pretty much the one of like the only reality TV families to ever actually make it. And so it was basically, how did they do that, is how I came up with my article on the what you can learn from the Kardashians. And
Yeah.
so it's like that motivation piece, I think, and drive. They have so much drive. And
Yeah.
so it's channeling that. Like, if the Kardashians can do it, I can do it. That's kind of, and so if Kris Jenner would send the email, I send the
I
email.
see
That's
that
kind of
email.
how.
Awesome. That's so good. That's so awesome. And one of the things I really enjoyed about it is that um it takes someone really mature to actually see beyond like the first impact that something like the Kardashians can just give you when you're seeing the show for the first time, right? And the whole drama, and of course,
Mhm.
so a part of us, or a part of for some of us, like the drama is actually a good thing because we actually
Yeah,
have fun enjoying it, right?
it's
Okay,
fun.
perfect.
It's
Yeah,
enjoyable.
right. Yeah, of course. But also like the fact that you can actually look at it and just see beyond just what the TV show is showing, or actually understanding the deeper motivations of and the deeper meanings of some situations in that show is something that you have to be really mature to do it. And like that was one of the things, one of the moments where I realized, oh, she like Austin has like this very adult view on things, and it was one of the things that really made me want to have you on the show and listen to your perspective, because of course you're also building like this giant masterpiece, which is in itself like something pretty good. But like the fact that I kept reading, kept understanding, like you have like this very mature view on things, was one of the things that made me really wanted to have you here. And in that note, let's go into the like the modern golden age part. And so basically, so just to give you some context on how this podcast showed, like there's this meme, and I'll send it to you after the show, by this guy on Twitter called Visa, and basically has like this meme where he points out like these different dominoes. And it starts by connecting fans, with it's an acronym from Friendly Ambitious Nerds. And if we tackle all those dominoes, we get into a golden age, a new golden age of humanity. And when I looked at that, I realized that I wanted to be part of that process. And to me, like the way that I found was, okay, I don't have like the capability of coming up with these brilliant ideas that will revolutionize like everything in the world, the whole world. But I do love to have conversations, and I'm pretty good at asking questions and trying to understand people's point of view. So I want to start a podcast, and I want to meet people and ask them about this topic and what they think about it and how can we get there. And so there's no specific definition for what a modern golden age is. And what I usually do is I ask people like this expression, what do you think, what image or what kind of thought causes on you? And so that's just like my first question, like what's a modern golden age look like to you when you listen to those expressions, to that expression, like what does your mind conjure?
Yeah. So I took world history last year, and something that was really interesting to me was the Islamic Golden Age, and how many incredible innovations and advancements were made during the Islamic Golden Age. And so when I think of modern golden age, I kind of think of how, specifically in education in the Islamic golden
Mm,
age, there's a lot of really cool things, and like the own library and all that. And so I, so to bring it to a modern golden age, I think a big piece of that is um, uh, innovating education and bringing it to a more modern place, because we still use the same education system that we made a bajillion years ago. And
yeah,
so it's the world has changed, and so education should change along with it. And so,
yeah.
uh, I mean, I think that using these apps to learn, and and giving teaching high schoolers independence and learning to learn and motivation and all of these really um, crucial life skills that are kind of brushed over in the education system, because
Hmm.
um, it was created for like just like workers and people who follow commands and instructions. But
Yeah.
now the world prioritizes and rewards independent thinkers, and people who take initiative. And so I think that we need to that updating this education system and getting all of these and encouraging independent thinking and um, independence and just like ambition in all of these kids um, could create a could help build and construct the modern golden age.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And like one of the things that I've come to believe after talking with a lot of people about this topic is that the first step to do so is to encourage people to live purpose-led lives. What I mean by purpose-led lives is basically to make a living out of solving meaningful problems to them, and add value with that, right? And so I do have like besides that change in education, what are some of other practices that you believe we should do in order to get there?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff around technology, and finding ways to use technology to its fullest application. Because um, a lot of people, when like you have Google and you're like, okay, I want to know more about this stuff, but not a lot of people really know how to use Google to its absolute fullest potential. And so, like, we did a Google search workshop where we learned all about the advanced features and how to like actually like Google search something. And so, there's so many cases like that where we have these really cool innovations and technologies, but we don't know how to use them as well as we could. And
Mm,
so, as well as they're even intended. And so, I think finding ways to um, use technology to, you know, its fullest potential is something important.
Yeah, it makes total sense, and I do believe that you mentioned on your newsletter about how to learn. You did mention that you guys are like the generation that has access to the internet, and I like the internet
Mhm.
basically just it's able to bring a whole new perspective on how to learn and how to understand things, and that's why I call it actually a modern golden age, because I do believe that the internet and the whole technology part will be extremely meaningful to them. Okay. So we're coming on our time, Austin, and I wanted to just say thank you so much for being here. Before we wrap up, though, I do have one last question, which is basically if people want to find out more about you, if they want to subscribe to your newsletter, if they want to reach and get in touch with you, what are the best places to do so?
Well, I have Twitter, so at Austin Scholar on Twitter, and then my newsletter is on Substack, and it's called Austin Scholar. And so
Yeah.
those are the two places where you can find me.
Perfect. We'll leave the links in the description. And to everyone listening to the podcast, please go check the Austin's newsletter. It's absolutely gorgeous. She writes really well, by the way. You write really well. So
Thank you.
and once again, you have this whole very mature perspective. So congratulations on that. And once again, Austin, it was very good to have you here. I really hope we
It
can
was great.
we can chat. And to everyone listening, once again, go to the links, follow Austin's work. And if you like the podcast, feel free to give it a rating in your favorite podcast platform. And I'll see you all on the next episode. Bye.